My name is Violet Sinclair. I'm 27 years old, and the moment everything changed didn't feel loud. It felt quiet. So quiet that if you weren't paying attention, you might have missed it completely. My boyfriend once looked at me in our kitchen, leaning against the counter like he was rehearsing something, and said, "I think you need to move out for a while." And I remember something inside me didn't shatter. It stilled. Not anger, not panic, just clarity. At the time, I don't think Ethan understood what that silence meant, but I did. Before I met Ethan Caldwell, my life was simple, structured in a way that felt intentional, not boring. I worked as a systems analyst in Seattle. My days were predictable. Work, gym, gaming, quiet weekends with a few close friends. I had my own apartment, my own routines, and a kind of independence that didn't need validation. I liked knowing where things stood. Then I met Ethan at a friend's housewarming party. He was the kind of person who filled a room without trying. Easy smile, quick jokes, conversations that flowed without effort. He laughed at something I said, something awkward, and instead of brushing it off, he leaned into it, stayed in the conversation. That was new for me. We clicked fast. The first couple of years felt right, natural. We moved in together after about a year and a half, adopted a German Shepherd mix named Rocket, 85 pounds of chaos and loyalty. He made the apartment feel like something more permanent, like we were building something real. Looking back, the signs were always there, just quiet. Ethan checked his phone a lot when we were together. Not in an obvious way, not rude exactly, but constant. Like there was always another conversation happening somewhere else that mattered just as much as the one we were in. And he needed opinions for everything. What to eat, what to wear, whether a decision felt right. At first, I thought it was just personality. Then I realized it wasn't just people. It was one person, Tara, Ethan's best friend since high school. They talked every day, shared passwords, knew everything about each other's lives down to the smallest detail. It was intense. But I told myself close friendships weren't a bad thing. I wanted to be supportive. I really did. But Tara had a way of making me feel like I was temporary. Not openly rude, not confrontational, just dismissive, like I was standing slightly outside a conversation I was supposed to be part of. She would cut me off mid-sentence to ask Ethan something completely unrelated, show up unannounced with what she called emergencies that somehow always required his immediate attention. Plans would shift, decisions would change, and somehow it always circled back to Tara. At first, it was small things. "We can reschedule. Tara really needs me tonight. She's going through something. I can't just ignore that." It sounded reasonable. That's what made it hard to question. But patterns don't announce themselves loudly. They repeat. One night made it impossible to ignore. I had tickets to a gaming convention, something I'd been excited about for months. Ethan said he'd come with me. He even helped plan the day. 2 hours before we were supposed to leave, Tara called, crying. Something about a guy from a dating app ghosting her. I watched Ethan's face shift as he listened. The concern, the urgency, and then he looked at me. "I think I should stay." Just like that. No hesitation, no real consideration. I remember standing there, holding the tickets, feeling something quiet settle into place. "Okay," I said. He nodded, relieved. "We'll go next time, I promise." There wasn't a next time. He stayed home, ice cream, movie night, comfort, and I went alone. If your partner drops your plans to manage someone else's emotions, that's not kindness. That's priority. And I wasn't it. I told myself it was just one night, but it wasn't. It became a pattern. Around year 3, Tara went through a messy breakup, and suddenly she wasn't just part of Ethan's life. She was part of ours, constantly. She showed up more often, needed him more, inserted herself into moments that were supposed to belong to us. Date nights became group therapy sessions. Weekends turned into interruptions, and Ethan always chose her. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just consistently. My friend Bobby noticed it before I admitted it to myself. After Tara interrupted our plans for the 3rd time in a month, he pulled me aside and said, "You don't see it yet, but she's not just his friend. She's controlling the relationship." I laughed it off, because the alternative, that someone was intentionally inserting themselves into my relationship, felt too calculated, too deliberate. But then I met Marcus at my gym. He didn't do subtle. One afternoon, Tara showed up uninvited while we were hosting a small barbecue. She walked in like she belonged there, barely acknowledging me. Marcus watched her for about 30 seconds, then said casually, "Don't you have your own life to manage?" The silence that followed was sharp. Ethan looked embarrassed. Tara looked annoyed. And I had to look away so I wouldn't smile. After that, Tara made sure to visit when Marcus wasn't around. That told me everything I needed to know. We tried to plan a camping trip once, just the two of us. No signal, no distractions, a reset. I bought the gear, picked the location, actually let myself look forward to it. The night before we were supposed to leave, Tara called. Work crisis. Something urgent. Something only Ethan could apparently help with, even though they worked in completely different fields. The trip was canceled. I spent the weekend at home, scrolling past stories of the two of them at a rooftop bar. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a realization settling into place. This wasn't random. It wasn't temporary. It was a pattern. And I was starting to understand my role in it. I wasn't his priority. I was his option. And Tara? She was the constant. After that weekend, something in me stopped trying to explain things away. Not all at once, but enough that I started noticing details I used to ignore. The way Ethan would glance at his phone mid-conversation, not just checking, but waiting, like he was anticipating Tara's response before finishing a sentence with me. The way decisions weren't really decisions until they passed through her. And the way my presence in my own relationship started to feel negotiable. It wasn't loud. That's the part people don't understand about this kind of thing. There's no single explosion, just pressure, repetition, subtle shifts that slowly rearrange the structure until you don't recognize it anymore. Around that time, Tara became even more involved. Her breakup had left her fragile, according to Ethan, which somehow translated into her being present in almost every part of our lives. She needed him. Constantly. And he showed up. Every time. At first, I tried to adjust. I told myself relationships require flexibility, that supporting your partner means supporting the people they care about. But there's a difference between support and displacement. And I was being displaced. One night, we had dinner reservations. Nothing fancy, just something we'd planned earlier in the week. I got home early, changed, even took Rocket out so we could leave on time. Ethan walked in 20 minutes before we were supposed to go, phone already in his hand. I might have to cancel, he said, not even looking at me yet. I felt something tighten in my chest, but my voice stayed even. Why? Tara's not doing great tonight. She said she really needs someone to talk to. I held his gaze. And you're the only person who can do that? He hesitated, just for a second. Then, yeah, right now. Right now. It was always right now. Immediate, urgent, unavoidable. I nodded slowly. Then go. He exhaled, relieved again. We'll reschedule. We didn't. That became normal. Plans with me were flexible. Plans with Tara were fixed. Somewhere along the way, Ethan stopped even pretending to balance it. And I stopped pretending it didn't bother me. My friends noticed before I fully admitted it out loud. Carlos was the first to say something directly. He came over one evening while Ethan was out, again, and watched me sit on the couch, scrolling through nothing. You okay? He asked. I shrugged. Just tired. Carlos didn't buy it. He never did. You're not tired. You're adjusting. To what? To being second in your own relationship. The words landed heavier than I expected. I didn't respond right away, because part of me already knew. I just hadn't said it yet. Bobby was less subtle. At a small get-together, after Ethan canceled last minute, again, Bobby leaned over and said, if someone keeps pulling your partner away from you, that's not coincidence. That's strategy. I frowned. You think Tara's doing it on purpose? I think she likes being the center of his attention, he said simply. And you're in the way of that. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend Ethan. But I didn't have anything solid to stand on, because the pattern was there, clearer every day. Around that time, I started spending more time at the gym again. Not just for the workout, but for the quiet, for the feeling of control. That's where Marcus came in again. He had this way of cutting through things without making it complicated. One afternoon, after I mentioned Tara, casually, like it wasn't a big deal, he just looked at me and said, "You're describing a 3-person relationship." I let out a small laugh. It's not like that. He didn't smile back. Then why does it sound exactly like that? I didn't answer, because I didn't have one. Even outside my immediate circle, people were starting to notice. At work, Diane, our senior security analyst, treated everything like a system you could map. When I explained the situation to her, she didn't react emotionally. She analyzed it. Classic triangulation, she said. I blinked. What? One person creates tension between 2 others, she explained calmly, then positions themselves as the mediator, the advisor, the necessary connection point. It gives them control. I sat there processing. That's a lot. It's also predictable, she added. Watch the pattern. Don't focus on what they say. Focus on what keeps happening. So I did. And once I started watching, I couldn't unsee it. Tara didn't just show up randomly. She showed up when Ethan and I had plans. She didn't just give opinions. She planted doubts. Subtle questions that sounded harmless on the surface. Do you feel like Violet really supports your career? Isn't it a little weird how much she games? Don't you think you have been compromising more than she has? They weren't accusations. They were suggestions. But suggestions, repeated often enough, start to feel like truth. And Ethan started bringing those thoughts home. At first, it was small comments. You've been gaming a lot lately? I looked at him, confused. I always game. You've never had a problem with it. I know, I don't know. Maybe it's a bit much. A bit much. That was new. Then it escalated. My mom asked what you're planning long-term with your career. I frowned. You've always said you respect what I do. I do, he said quickly. I just think maybe you could aim higher? Aim higher. That wasn't his language. It felt borrowed. Even my coworkers became part of the conversation. Do you think it's appropriate how close you are with some of the guys at work? He asked one night. I stared at him. Since when is that an issue? He hesitated again. And in that pause, I could almost hear Tara's voice echoing behind his words. The hardest part wasn't the accusations. It was the way Ethan's memory seemed to shift. The things I had done for him, the support, the consistency, the effort, started fading in his version of events. I reminded him gently one night. I helped you prep for your promotion interview, I said. I stayed up with you, went through your slides, ran mock questions. He nodded. Yeah, I appreciate that. But now it sounds like you think I don't support you. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. The conversation went in circles. It always did. Because every time I brought up Tara's influence, Ethan shut it down the same way. She just wants what's best for me. Or worse. You're being paranoid. Paranoid. That word lingered longer than it should have, because it made me question my own perception. Made me second-guess patterns that were objectively there. And that's how it works. Not through force. Through doubt. I started feeling like I was competing with someone who wasn't even technically part of the relationship. And the more I tried to address it, the more defensive Ethan became. So sometimes I stopped trying. Escaped into my own space. My games. My online world. There, things made sense. Rules were clear. Effort matched outcome. No hidden variables. My raid group had been together for years. Kevin, our leader, lived in Portland. We'd never met in person, but we talked almost every day. One night, after a long session, he noticed I was distracted. You're off tonight, he said. Just tired. Try again. I hesitated, then gave him the short version. He was quiet for a second, then said, Sounds like your relationship has a third player running cheat codes. I let out a small laugh, but it stuck, because it was accurate. Unfair advantage. Invisible interference. A game you couldn't win because the rules kept changing. And deep down, I was starting to realize I wasn't imagining it. I was losing something real. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And I didn't know how much was left to lose. The moment that ended, everything didn't come from an argument. It came from a fever. A bad one. The kind that makes your body feel like it's not entirely yours anymore. Heavy, unsteady, disconnected. I remember the room tilting slightly when I stood up. The cold sweat. The way even holding a glass of water felt like effort. I don't get sick often, but when I do, it hits hard. That week, I could barely function. Ethan was supposed to leave that Friday for a wine tasting trip with Tara and another friend, Jen. It had been planned for weeks, I knew that. And I hate asking for help. I really do. But that night, sitting on the edge of the bed with a fever pushing past 102, I realized I couldn't manage it alone. So I asked. Not dramatically, not demanding, just honestly. Hey, I said quietly, my voice rough from dehydration. Do you think you could postpone the trip by a day? Just until I stabilize a bit. Ethan looked at me, concern flickering across his face. For a moment, just a moment, I thought he was going to say yes. Yeah, that makes sense, he said. Relief came fast. Too fast. Because an hour later, he came back into the room with a different expression. Tighter. More conflicted. Tara thinks I shouldn't cancel, he said. Of course she does. I didn't say that out loud. She said you're an adult and you can take care of yourself. That it's not fair for me to miss the trip over this. I stared at him. For a second, I genuinely thought I had misheard. I have a fever of 102, I said slowly. I know, but... But what? He hesitated. And in that hesitation, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, just permanently. She thinks you might be overreacting, he added, softer now. Like, maybe you're trying to make me stay. That did it, not the words. The source of them. because he wasn't even questioning it. He was delivering it, like it had already passed through whatever filter mattered. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't explain how absurd it was to accuse someone of manipulation for being sick. I just looked at him for a long second and then turned over. Do whatever you want, I said. My voice was calm, completely steady, and I think that confused him more than anything else. He left the next morning, packed, dressed, slightly rushed. He paused at the door like he expected me to say something. I didn't. The door closed, and the apartment felt colder. Not just empty, colder. He took the good thermometer with him, and most of the toilet paper. It sounds small, but in that moment, it wasn't. It felt symbolic. Like even basic consideration had been divided, and I hadn't gotten the better half. I stayed in bed most of the day, drifting in and out of sleep, the fever rising and falling in waves. At some point, I managed to text Carlos. Didn't even explain much. Just, hey, you around? He showed up within an hour. No questions. Just presence. Soup, Gatorade, quiet efficiency. He opened the windows, checked my temperature with a cheap spare thermometer he picked up on the way, took Rocket out for a walk so my dog wouldn't suffer because I couldn't move. That's what care looks like. Not speeches, not advice. Action. Even my online friends came through. When I told the guild I couldn't join the raid, they didn't just say, feel better. They adapted. Took turns streaming games for me on Discord so I had something to watch. Something to focus on besides how bad I felt. People I had never met in person rearranged their night for me. And the person I lived with left. That contrast stayed with me, because it clarified something I had been avoiding. Care isn't about proximity. It's about choice. Ethan came back Sunday night. Walked in like nothing had happened. No urgency, no apology. Just normal. How was your weekend? He asked, dropping his bag. I blinked at him. For a second, I thought he was joking. I was sick, I said. Yeah, but you're better now, right? I studied his face, trying to find something, anything, that showed he understood what had happened. There was nothing. He spent the next 2 hours scrolling through photos from the trip, telling me about the vineyard, about how some guy flirted with Tara, laughing, like I hadn't spent the weekend alone, barely able to stand. That was the moment the emotional distance became physical, not in space, in meaning. 2 days later, he went quiet. Short answers, always on his phone, detached. I gave him space. Part of me thought maybe guilt was finally catching up, that maybe he needed time to process. But the silence wasn't guilt. It was preparation. That Friday, I came home from work and found him sitting at the kitchen table, still, focused, like he had been waiting. We need to talk, he said. And just like that, I knew. He started speaking. And it didn't sound like him. Not really. It sounded rehearsed, structured, like a script he had practiced until it felt natural. He used the phrase red flags over and over, said I was controlling, that asking him to stay when I was sick was manipulative, that I was isolating him from his friends because I had an issue with Tara's constant presence. Then came the language. Words I had never heard him use before. Emotional labor, toxic dynamics, codependency. They didn't belong to him. They belonged to someone else. I listened, didn't interrupt, didn't argue, because at that point, I wasn't confused anymore. I just said quietly, it feels like I'm listening to Tara talk through you. His reaction was immediate. Sharp. Not everything is about Tara, he snapped. These are my feelings. I held his gaze. Are they? Silence. Then frustration. Then distance again. I think I need space, he said finally, to reevaluate everything. There it was. The conclusion. And I think you should move out. For a while. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. We both paid for the apartment. Equally. So I tilted my head slightly and said calmly, if you need space, you can stay with Tara. His expression shifted. Hurt. Defensive. You're proving my point, he said. No, I replied softly. I'm just done arguing with it. I didn't pack immediately. I didn't storm out. I just moved with intention. Grabbed a bag, essentials, nothing dramatic. That night, I stayed at Carlos's place. Not because I had to, because I needed distance to think clearly. The next morning, Ethan texted me. I think it's better if we make this permanent. I'll arrange to get my things while you're at work. 5 years. Ended in a message. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not crying, not angry. Just still. Because there's a moment in every ending where you realize you weren't fighting one event. You were fighting a pattern. And the pattern won. The next 2 weeks were strange, quiet, but not empty. I threw myself into structure again. Work, gym, routine, rebuilding. Not just space, but identity. Carlos helped me rearrange the apartment. Bobby brought over a spare TV. Marcus installed a pull-up bar and a heavy bag. The living room became something new. Half gaming setup, half training space. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like mine. At night, when the silence got louder than I liked, Kevin and the guild kept me grounded. We started a new campaign. They even gifted me a rare item, something that normally takes months to earn. It sounds small, but it wasn't. It was recognition, connection, something real. Ethan came by once to collect his things, took half my sock drawer, left behind a bunch of random bathroom products. For 2 weeks, I used lavender shampoo because I didn't feel like shopping. Breakups are like that. You lose the person, but you keep the leftovers. Then 3 weeks later, he texted, "Hey, just checking in." I looked at the message, felt nothing, and that scared me more than anything else. At first, his messages were light, careful, like he was testing the water without stepping in. "Hope you're doing okay. Did you find that yoga mat? Rocket still stealing your spot on the couch?" I kept my replies short, neutral. Fine. No yoga mat. Rocket's good. No emotion. No invitation. Because I wasn't angry anymore. And that changed everything. 3 weeks after the breakup, he called. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, curiosity maybe, made me swipe right. His voice sounded different. Softer. "I miss what we had," he said. Straight to the point. No build-up. No pretense. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. Silence stretched between us. "I think I reacted too quickly," he continued. "Maybe we should talk. Try again." Try again. Like the past 5 years had been a draft. Like the ending hadn't already been written. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I asked one question. "Have you talked to Tara about this?" The line went quiet. Not for a second. Long enough to matter. "This isn't about Tara," he said finally. But it was. The pause said everything. I closed my eyes for a moment, then said calmly, "I'm good, Ethan." And I hung up, blocked his number before the doubt had a chance to settle in. That should have been the end of it. Clean. Final. But a week later, I got a message from Tara. Facebook. Of all places. "I know we've had our differences," she wrote, "but I just wanted to check on you." I stared at the screen. Read it twice. Then the next message came. "Ethan didn't handle things well. You deserve better." There it was. Concern. Validation. Positioning. And then, "Maybe we could grab coffee sometime? I feel like we never really got to know each other properly." I let out a quiet breath. Because suddenly, everything made sense in a way it hadn't before. This wasn't random. This wasn't kindness. This was control shifting direction. Tara didn't want Ethan. Not really. She wanted influence. And now that Ethan was unstable, missing me, reaching out, she was adjusting the board again, including me. I scrolled down. There was a selfie. Casual. But not really. Intentional. Clear. I didn't feel flattered. I felt clarified. When someone crosses a boundary while pretending to comfort you, that's not support. That's a test. I screenshotted everything. Sent it to Carlos and Bobby. "The audacity is unreal," I typed. Carlos replied with a popcorn gif. Bobby said, "Time to end this properly." I also showed Diane at lunch the next day. She read the messages like they were a report. Precise. Focused. "She's trying to flip you," she said. "Into what?" "An asset," Diane replied simply. "Against Ethan. And to maintain control of the narrative." I nodded slowly. Because that felt exactly right. "So what do I do?" Diane grabbed a napkin. Started sketching something that looked like a strategy diagram. It was ridiculous. But the core idea was simple. Clarity. Public. Controlled. No drama. No ambiguity. So I messaged Tara back. "You're right," I wrote. "We should talk. There's a cafe downtown." She replied almost instantly. "Perfect." Of course. I got there early. Picked a table with a clear view of the entrance. Ordered coffee. Waited. Right on time, she walked in. Dressed like it wasn't just coffee. Hair done. Makeup precise. Confidence effortless. She spotted me. Smiled. Started walking over. And then she stopped. Because I stood up. And so did Carlos. And Bobby. At a nearby table, Jen was already sitting. Quiet. Observant. Tara's expression shifted. Confusion first. Then calculation. Then something closer to panic. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tightening. I stayed calm. Composed. "I thought we could make it a group thing," I said, "since you've always liked being involved in other people's relationships." Carlos had his phone out. Not obvious, but present. Tara's eyes flicked to it, then back to me. You're being dramatic," she said quickly. "I was just trying to—" "Check on me?" I finished gently. Silence. I tilted my head slightly. "I've been telling them," I continued, my tone even, How you spent years inserting yourself into my relationship, creating problems, then tried to reach out to me the second it ended. That's not what happened, she snapped. Then explain the messages, Bobby said calmly. Tara opened her mouth, closed it, looked around, looking for control, for leverage. She didn't find it. And then Jen spoke. Quiet, firm. Just stop, Tara. All eyes turned to her. Jen leaned forward slightly, her expression tired, not angry. I watched you do the same thing to me, she said. You told me my boyfriend was holding me back, that I deserved better. Tara froze. And then you tried to date him 2 weeks later. The air shifted, heavier, sharper. Tara grabbed her bag. This is ridiculous, she said quickly. You're twisting everything. But her voice didn't carry the same confidence anymore. It cracked, just slightly. Enough. She turned, walked out fast, didn't look back. And just like that, the illusion broke. We stayed, ordered coffee, compared stories. And that's when it got interesting. Because it wasn't just me. It wasn't just Jen. There were patterns. Repeated. Different people. Same outcome. Jen even had screenshots. Tara talking about Ethan behind his back, calling him weak, saying he was too dependent. At the same time, she was telling him I wasn't enough. Control. From both sides. Carlos sent the video to Ethan later. Simple message. You should see who you trusted over Violet. I didn't feel victorious. I felt calm. Like something that had been draining me finally had a name. 2 days later, Tara posted on Instagram. Black and white story. Sad music. Fake friends, toxic people. Predictable. At the gym that week, I ran into someone unexpected. Ryan, Tara's ex. We recognized each other, ended up talking. Protein shakes after. And his story? Almost identical. Same patterns. Same manipulation. Different target. We both laughed at one point. Not because it was funny, because it was consistent. Later that weekend, Ryan joined one of our online gaming sessions. Kevin immediately nicknamed him Another Survivor. It stuck. Life moved forward. Not dramatically. Just steadily. About 2 months after the cafe, Jen told me Ethan and Tara had a massive falling out. No surprise there. Without her control, the structure collapsed. Ethan tried reaching out again. Long message. Apology. Said he'd been manipulated. Said he missed me. I read it. Then deleted it. 5 years is a long time to let someone else think for you. I wasn't interested in revisiting that version of him. I ran into him once. At a store. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Just less certain. Can we talk? He asked. I glanced at my cart. Frozen pizza, energy drinks, a new game, then back at him. This is who I am, I said calmly. The person you said wasn't enough. He didn't respond, and I didn't wait for him to. I walked away, and that was it. The apartment became mine again. Fully. I painted the living room the dark blue he used to say was too much. Set up a proper home office. Rocket settled into a new rhythm. Morning runs. Quiet afternoons, evenings curled up near me while I played. Work improved. I got promoted. My boss said he noticed a shift in my confidence. He wasn't wrong. Carlos and Bobby stayed close. We started weekly game nights. Loud, unstructured, real. And then I met someone new. His name is Alex. He's 27, software engineer. We met at a conference. No complications, no external voices. Just conversation. Easy. When I told him my game, he just smiled. Cool. That was it. No judgment. No analysis. Just acceptance. He has his own life, his own friends, his own mind, and he doesn't need anyone else to tell him what to think. The first night we hung out, we ended up playing games until 3 a.m. He beat me more times than I'd like to admit. Explained mechanics like he was teaching a class. Confident, not controlling. There's a difference. Kevin met him online. Immediately approved. Diane met him in person. Same result. Things aligned, naturally. No interference. No competition. Just space for something real. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't before. If someone keeps choosing another person over your relationship, that's not a small issue. That is the issue. And if someone needs a third voice to define how they feel about you, then they were never really choosing you to begin with. Walking away didn't feel like losing. It felt like stepping out of something that was never meant to be fair. And for the first time in a long time, everything is quiet again. But this time, it feels right.